Hi everyone. I will be responding to prompt number 2. But before that, I must say that I struggled with this task. It was difficult for me and it was emotion filled. When I watched Kelly Clarkson's video, I found myself sobbing. I bawled, and it was like a trip down memory lane, going back to when I was a child, and that was me chasing my father. It was really it was it was a healing experience. Actually, it was a powerful experience I had watching it. Anyway, part of the difficulty too was that uh, I th- I had a different attachment style with my father, as compared to my mom. Uh, with my mom, I had a secure attachment. Being in a patriarchal family, my mother was a primary caregiver, and she was always there for us, for me and my sister when I was growing up, and I always felt the security I needed. I expressed to her my needs and my fears when I was a child, and she would always be there. She would always be accessible, and therefore the bond between us was established. I remember also that I would keep her picture in my wallet going to school. Whenever I missed her, I would look at it, and then I would be excited to go back home to see her, to be comforted by her, and we would cuddle in bed together, and we would we would just comfort each other. With my father, as far back as I can remember, my father always communicated with me on his level, and he had this unique way of making me feel important as if I were never a child. He would confide in me, tell me about his struggles, mostly about my mom, and then of society, he'd tell me about stories about whatever else. And he would utilize me as a sounding board, and I took it as a compliment, and I would listen to him intently and grasp his mind, with the mind of a woman. And as one may have guessed, with his confidence in me, I grew up quickly, and since abandoned what girls find intriguing in their formative years. So I was raised to believe that at the young age that fun was a 4-letter word, that the newspaper was to be read every day, and according to my father, the world was full of evil men and therefore was dangerous. So also going to the beach was frivolous to him, and at summer camps and riding in cars with boys were just vacuous, unnecessary things that his daughters would never indulge in. And well, not as far as he was concerned. And my dad took us on a musical ride. He took us to discos. We had our own disco called Flight 101, and so he would turn the dancing floor into our playground. He and mom swinging to John Travolta's Saturday Night Fever. So we were that close. I remember we would also huddle together on weekends. We'd get lost playing the piano together. He would help me improvise on pieces of what I would on music sheets. Like 10, we would spend 10. I remember we would spend 12 hours on a given weekend. Became a tradition. And so we bonded, and we both laughed and argued about jazz and why it was so cool. So I had that closeness with my father, but not until but up until I was a teenager, that all changed. I remember he didn't want to be close to us emotionally, though he was there for us intellectually, and he had all these rules that we followed. Emotionally, he wasn't there. He was unavailable, And I often asked him about it, and I often asked him why he wouldn't, share those things with me, or he would talk, like, why I couldn't talk to him about my problems, or teenage girl teenagers like me, female girls like me would experience. And then what he would say was, that is your mother's job, not my job. So I struggled with that for a long time. And I even had to go to a counselor at one point when I was in high school. Even up to my college days, he was always the issue. He was always my issue going to a counselor, because I wanted that closeness with my father back. I would get jealous at my classmates having beer with their father after work or after school, and I wish that I had the kind of relationship again with my father. So of course, how did this impact? So I would say that my relationship with him became dismissive. It was more of like a dismissive style. And so how did this impact how did this impact me? So believing that he wasn't going to be there, and having the need for a father figure, I guess growing up, I realized early on that I had to be strong for myself, that I had to be independent, and that I could not rely on anybody else but myself. So later on, I became a bit of, withdrawn and aloof about being with him. I don't even remember him saying "I love you" to us. Also, another important fact that I have to mention is that he told us growing up that since our society was permissive of infidelity, he already forewarned us that in your relationships, in your future relationships, and with your husbands, you should expect infidelity, because it is normal. It is something that is to be expected. And so, of course, I felt doomed about it, and that was one thing I didn't want in my relationship. So he had all these rules, and I remember him saying, "It's more important for me to follow these rules than for you to love me." And so that stuck with me, and so that's what I did. I remember following all his rules. I was always the good girl, the good student, the good daughter. And I would never complain, and I would always accommodate his wants and his needs. Even if I didn't want to, I would just do that just to please him. So and I equated love with me satisfying his needs, satisfying what he expected of me. And so if I did better in school, he would show appreciation of me, he would love me better. That's what I thought. And it has always been that way. It had always been that way growing up. And seeing that my sister also, because my sister had a different style with my father. My sister was, if I became accommodating of my father, my sister would resist. She was resistant of my father. She was sort of like the rebellious daughter. And I saw how my father was to my sister, that he would also he physically hurt my sister whenever she rebelled, and he did corporal punishment with her, and I didn't want that for myself, and so I did the opposite. I completely did the opposite, and just tried to please him. So needless to say, because he was dismissive of me, I started avoiding him so that I won't feel rejected. I won't feel the rejection that he would always I would always feel whenever I came to him for help, for my emotional needs. And so I just started withdrawing until I stopped needing him. But of course, this need did not disappear. It was just displaced. And so, of course, who did I get involved with? Emotionally unavailable men. Emotionally unavailable men who were not there for me, who couldn't be there for me whenever I needed most. So yes, my relationships with other men, with my relationship that happened that I had after my father were the same. It was just the same. I just kept pleasing them, seeking approval, always second guessed myself, doubted myself, doubted if they really loved me. You know, I felt insecure. I felt insecure in my relationships. And although I was not angry with them, I was just passive about it. I was quiet about it, and became resentful of my relationships until, I again started withdrawing and then avoiding withdrawing, and then I was gone. So it was not until 4 years ago that I realized I had to do something about that. I knew that I contributed to these kind of relationships that I had. And knowing how my father has impacted my relationships, I knew that I had to do something about it. I realized that some of my fears were coming from my insecurities when I was a child, and knowing that now, and reflecting about it now, has enlightened me more, and given me me more guidance into how I would relate to my husband. In fact, the change happened years ago already, 4 years ago, when I started dating my husband. So I decided not to date older men anymore. I decided to date younger men, and that's when I met my husband. So my husband is only 2 years older than me. Now, my husband also, he manifests some dismissive style of attachment as well, that I think obviously he got from his parents. Growing up in a chaotic environment, his parents were alcoholics, and they were always fighting until they divorced. And that's now reflecting on the attachment styles. I realize that he manifests the dismissive style of attachment. So what do I want to do? What would I do to change that? That kind of style of relationship. I would say now that because of my awareness already 4 years ago of my contribution to my relationships, I had become more aware of my contribution. I had become more aware of what I need to do. First, I knew that I had to get rid of my fears. Well, if not totally get rid of my fears, at least what I would do is, whenever I doubted myself or my relationship, I would always ask, is this coming from a place of fear or coming from real life? Or is it just my insecurity? So I sometimes and sometimes the answer is always, is this just your insecurity? So when the answer is just insecurity, then it's something that I put aside. And I try to come from a place of openness all the time, and more a place of confidence about the relationship, confidence in myself as well, knowing that I'm not perfect, and knowing that I don't have to please other people or please my husband, as I realize I don't have to please anybody. And that all I have, and that my needs also has to be attended to, not only my husband's needs. So that's what I'm trying to do right now. Whenever I need him for something, or my needs are not met, or something that bothers me, I make sure that I tell him and communicate with him. And coming from a place of openness and honesty, and of course from a nurturing, also sort of and loving relationship that is always available to him, that I give to him. Then he feels secure to emotionally engage with me as well, as he never had to do this to before. Growing up in the kind of chaotic environment, he didn't also know how to communicate well. So we're both learning right now, and I'm so happy. I'm learning all this. I mean, although I knew about this before, it was never something that I reflected on, nor I was open to processing when I was younger. So I'm happy that we're doing this. Thank you.